It's little questions like that that starts this small process of separating, because in that pain, what they have probably unawarely done is link that pain to Jesus rather
Mm,
than separating, but rather than linking that pain to those people, they link the pain to Jesus now. And so you have
yeah.
to start by slowly separating into where they can say, my pain's over here, but Jesus, which still demands an answer, is over here.
Well, hello and welcome to the Kill the Dragon podcast. I'm your host, Gunnar Akridge, and author of the book by the same title, Kill the Dragon, Reclaiming Your Life from the Dark Side of Religion. And that's what this podcast is all about. We're exploring themes related to the influence of the religious spirit in our lives, and we feature guests who are on their own journeys of finding freedom from the shackles of misguided religion. So if you've been hurt by religion, if you're deconstructing or reconstructing your faith, or if you simply envision a version of the church that looks more like Jesus than a dragon, then this podcast is for you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button or give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. And before we jump into today, I'd love it if you'd leave a review so that more people can find the show and benefit from it. Well, I am super pumped about our episode today because we have a special guest, Jamin Mays, aka the Reconstructionist on TikTok. And we are going to be talking about deconstruction and reconstruction on the podcast today. Welcome to Kill the Dragon, Jamin. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, brother. Can't wait.
Well, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little your story. Who are you, Jamin?
Sure. So my name's Jamin Mays. As you said, I am the Reconstructionist on TikTok. I grew up in the church, right? I grew up in the church. I was a Christian from a very young age. I would always talk to God as if we're talking right now. So I had that type of relationship at a very young age. And around college is the around the time I started questioning my faith, which
Yeah.
is a perfectly fine thing to do. I believe everyone goes through this process. They have to. Um, and I kind of dropped a lot of my core beliefs, or not so much dropped as in I completely abandoned them, but I was very skeptical of them.
Yeah.
You go to college and there's a lot of bees in your ear. Everyone's
Right.
telling you something different. You're learning a lot of new things. So it's like, well, is what I believe actually true?
Hmm.
Right. And that's where my deconstruction journey started. Right.
Mm.
And I believe the process of reconstruction, which is what deconstruction is supposed to be, right?
Mm.
Began for me with first being honest with why I was asking these questions. Like where did this come from? Like why am I doing this? I grew up in it. Like why not just continue to follow it? Um, the way my mind works, and I believe God has placed this on the human heart on the whole, is we have a need to go after the truth. Like it's written
Yeah.
on our hearts. His handiwork is put into creation itself. We're going to look up at the sky and wonder. And I just really wanted to know what the truth is, right? So I've gone through, and even after coming back to the faith, I still went through. I still had to break away from the spirit of religion as well.
Yeah.
And you helped in a big way with that, as well as other people along the path. So, and here I am now, trying to help people that are going through what I can see as toxic deconstruction, reconstruct back into the faith and get answers to questions and hopefully heal their way back into it. So that's a bit of my journey as it relates to this. Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I love the whole idea of reconstruction because there are so many right now that are maybe questioning like you did. questioning the faith, questioning what they've always believed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. I mean, we ought to know what we believe, and that causes us to question. Questioning is a good thing.
Right.
But it's like you said, the toxic deconstruction versus reconstructing and laying a sure foundation
Right.
out on the other side of that. Maybe talk a little bit about, like, what is that? What is the difference between what you call toxic deconstruction and maybe what it looks like in a healthy way of reconstructing? What
Of
do you mean by
course.
toxic?
So what I mean by toxic, well, let me start with what deconstruction is,
Yeah,
right? So
that's a good place to
deconstruction,
start. Right.
right. So just broadly, and I'm going to give a very simple definition so everyone can understand what we're talking about. Deconstruction is just a methodology for figuring out how text and meaning relate. Again, in relation to Christian deconstruction, you are in many ways examining your beliefs, which stem from the Bible. So you're examining the Bible and seeing how the impact of what you've been taught, what the text actually says, and what this means for your life should impact your worldview going forward.
Mm,
So deconstruction finds problems. Reconstruction provides solutions, right?
mm,
So it becomes toxic when you stop at the finding problems section of your journey,
mm.
right?
That's good. Yeah.
You've you've killed the dragon, so to speak, but you've got nothing after that.
Mm,
Um, so Reconstruction, it starts one, being honest, you are seeking truth. You're not just trying to destroy something, right? You're also trying to seek truth afterward. And what becomes toxic is when you let already preconceived biases. Maybe it's through your experience growing up with religion. Maybe it's through your just, maybe you didn't grow up particularly religious, but you just have a bad outlook on religion itself, right?
right.
Based on stuff you've heard, stuff that's happened throughout history, and nobody's saying that stuff didn't happen. But if it has a bearing on whether or not the text you're examining is true, you're going to have a problem, right? In the same way, you cannot judge Islam, for example, based on the actions of the terrorists in 9/11. You also should not judge Christianity based on like its misuse, right? Judge it based
Yeah.
on the reliability of Jesus, right? So in the case of what we're talking about of Christian deconstruction and how that looks positively. Um, one, um, start off with a good faith intention, like a good faith effort, as in, first, do I need to heal from some past traumas that I've had, right?
Mm,
Are there people that I need to forgive before I start examining whether or not this text is true. Well, whether or not its core message is Jesus reliable, whether or not that's true, should I begin by healing first, right? Um uh should I figure out why I'm doing this and then move on to, okay, let me examine the text in good faith. Let me say, okay, I know I've always had this worldview concerning oof, the gospel, concerning the reliability of the text. But what are dissenting worldviews? Like, am I caught in a bubble, or are there people outside of this bubble that can say, all right, I don't necessarily think like you, and I believe this is true?
mm.
So I would say get together a series after you've done the work of um, forgiveness, not only for, it's not for that person only, it's for yourself, right?
Right.
Forgiveness, you can walk forward into now seeking truth. And through that process, you get together a series of steps. I took this series of steps and I encourage people to do this, but it might look different for other people. And let me know if I'm rambling. But I
No, you're
encourage
good.
people. So I encourage people to take these steps. They may look different from other people, but it looked good. It worked for me. Start with the reality of God's existence, right? If you look out into the world, and this is where we start implementing the most apologetically toned evidence, right, or material. We're looking for, okay, does reality make more sense with a designer rather than space, time, and chance acting on matter, right?
Mm.
What makes more sense? Does it, when you look at something as complex as the human mind, for example, you look at something that complex, does it make more sense that it came from a designer or that it came from random chance? When in fact, when you look at every example in the known universe of complexity, it necessarily arises from intelligent design. All observable complex things that have ever been created from scratch come from intelligent beings. Now, nature is the thing in question. So you simply, my process was, and I went through this in college, I simply expanded that logic out onto, well, the next big thing. My mind is more complex than anything we know of in the known universe.
Yeah.
My iPhone was created. It's like you see a painting, you know there's a painter. You see creation, you know there's a creator. My mind is the most complex thing in the universe. There must be a God, right?
Yeah.
And so once you've gotten over that first hurdle, then it's okay, well, there's a God. Maybe I'm a deist. I wouldn't call that a win for Christians.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a deist. Now it's which God? Which God is reliable? And then that's when you come into the encounter of Christ. I, in fact, encourage people, controversial or not, I encourage people, hey, look into the other religions as well. You'll find out why they're false very quickly.
Sure.
Um, but when you look at Jesus, first start with, okay, well, is he reliable just as a person, right? If this is God, how did he treat people? What did he go around teaching? Right. And I think if you look at the evidence of how Jesus lived his life, how he loved and cared for people, and how he loved his enemies, this is a
Mm.
person of high moral standard, of which our ethical systems from the past 2,000 years have, in the Western world at least, have been completely shaped. Like the idea
Right.
of care for um, um, the idea of care for the lame, the broken, the people that cannot benefit society, unheard of before, not unheard of, but not widely spread before Jesus, right?
Right.
He was an epoch in history. And so then, okay, he's reliable just as a moral character. Now, what did he claim? Well, obviously he was in his right mind, and he claimed that he was here to set the captives free. He was here to die for the sins of many. He was here for the sick, right? The ones that need a doctor. And he claimed that he was going to die and rise from the dead. And this is where Christianity, if it's false, would be the most easily provable, verifiably false religion. Because unlike any other religion, our guy actually showed up in history, right? Our guy
Mm.
showed up and he claimed to be God. And he said he was going to prove this by dying and rising from the dead. So then you examine, okay, what is the evidence that he actually died and rose from the dead, right?
Yeah.
There are several facts that you can go into. I don't want to get into them right here, just for the sake of getting you in the conversation as well. But if you look at the facts surrounding Jesus' resurrection, the only reasonable explanation is that he actually rose. It's not only the fact that there's good evidence, positive evidence for him rising from the dead. It's also the fact that the negative evidence is so low. The naturalistic explanations, when compared to the explanation of resurrection, don't even don't even cut it by a mile, which is why there's no scholar of antiquity of all of the natural explanations that most people can think of. He didn't really die, fraud
Right.
theory, like they made it all up. They were hallucinating seeing him.
Mm.
Um, I forget the other one, but all of those have just been virtually dropped. You'll be, maybe surprised to know, your audience, I'm pretty sure you already know, but all those have been virtually dropped by scholars of antiquity because they don't make sense in comparison to him rising from the dead.
Right.
Now, so he's reliable. God exists. Jesus is reliable as that God. And then the third part is understanding what that means for you, right?
Mm.
Accepting I'm writing a philosophical essay on Reconstruction, as you know. And the third section is called My Love. This is your intimate relationship with that truth, the truth of Jesus. After you've gone through this process of healing, you've come back to a Jesus that now you recognize not as the people, those religious people that maybe hurt you growing up. Now you not
Yeah.
recognize as the religion itself, the religious spirit that maybe you are very much against in general, right? But you recognize him now as the king of the universe, the savior. Your love that you are now seeking relationship with, right?
Yeah.
And what that means for your life. So that's broadly how the process looks. There are details, but
Yeah.
that's the process I went through.
It's like a 30,000 foot view of just the existence of God, and then you're funneling down. And I love how
Yeah,
you don't stop at just the intellectual knowledge. It's this personal experience with Jesus and knowing him personally.
right,
I think about, I think you made a reference to this earlier about um, why people deconstruct. I know some of it happens in college, and we've experienced that if we've been in an environment where our faith is challenged.
right.
We go through this process,
Yeah,
but the the relational struggles and the hurt and the pain. Would you say that in your experience of talking with people and helping people reconstruct their faith, do you see kind of a common thread of pain in the whole picture?
yes. So there's a common thread of pain and misunderstanding, right?
Mm,
But to focus on the one you brought up is pain. And this is a smaller section than uh, more people give it credit for, but it's very loud and it's very felt in our culture today.
yeah,
This pain that people are going through. Not to go into obviously too much details, to respect confidentiality and like this person's confidence, but I've had several conversations, and the best conversations I've had have always happened not in the comment section, but in private when it's just us one on one, right? I have
sure.
a Discord, just to plug it, called the Reconstructionist, where I invite people, hey, to come DM me. We'll get on the Discord. We'll hop on a call, and I've had Norse pagans come on and had long conversations with them about how, growing up there was some. They didn't they didn't see the love of Jesus in their parents, or, and sometimes this is even worse, and I'll explain why, but sometimes this is even worse, is that they were cultural Christians. Their parents took them to church, but they never really
Mm,
valued, like it was nothing. So they called themselves Christians until they didn't, and didn't even feel like they were losing anything, because
right.
why would you if the parents aren't leading you in the way that you should go? It makes
Mm,
perfect sense that you would turn away from that. Makes perfect sense. So those tend to be the two things. It's a pain narrative in which a lot of times we got to do listen. It starts with listening, like listening to what they're
mm,
saying, like listening to the pain.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and then we introduce, just, it looks different, but I find introducing just sometimes simple questions for them to ponder afterward, right? So I've listened to you. I've even agreed that, hey, yeah, that wasn't. that wasn't right. But then I'll ask, yeah, but that wasn't Jesus though. So what do you think of Jesus? And it's like sometimes you'll get a visceral reaction, but sometimes you'll
Yeah.
actually sit with it and say, well, yeah, it wasn't Jesus. And then we start this small process. It's little questions like that that starts this small process of separating, because in that pain, what they have probably unawarely done is link that pain to Jesus rather
Mm,
than separating, but rather than linking that pain to those people, they link the pain to Jesus now. And so you have
yeah.
to start by slowly separating into where they can say, my pain's over here, but Jesus, which still demands an answer, is over here.
Mm,
Right. So yeah, that's a big theme. And it's something that the church has to listen to. As the church, we have to listen
yeah.
to and understand if we're ever going to help people heal.
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of, when you hear deconstruction from inside the church,
Mhm.
there's a lot of negative connotations with deconstruct. I mean, it's almost like um, well, if you're deconstructing, you your faith is shipwrecked, and we're almost gonna like just cut you off.
Yeah.
There's like this. Well, you're gone, so there. But I love your heart, Jamin, and I really feel like this has got to be this has got to be our starting place moving forward in the culture that we're in. If we're going to be disciple makers in this culture, we have to. I
Right.
love what you said. Listen to people. That's a starting place. Um, do you have? I know that you said you've got the TikTok account, and of course you're in the comments with people, but you're also taking time and in the Discord chat and in the just sitting across the table for coffee with people, just having these conversations all the time. I would love to to know if you have any like any wins, any stories of people who are reconstructing and that have made some real progress in this.
So, well, I want to say yes, because there have been people that there hasn't been this. It's not like a movie win, and sometimes
Right.
it doesn't look like how we think it's gonna look.
Yeah.
Uh, I think every person that goes out and spreads the gospel to people and like tries to help people explain what they want is for to have that movie moment where you're sitting across from
Oh man.
somebody and they start crying and they're bawling and they hug you. It's like you
Yeah.
saved me.
It's like the Christian touchdown or something, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it's little moments, right? Where somebody will message me and say, "Hey, you've helped me reconstruct. Like you're helping me reconstruct because there are a lot of things that I didn't believe." Even this morning, conversation with this person, and they're asking me, "Hey, I was told growing up that women couldn't be pastors, and people were, you know, telling me that I had to only, talk to women. I couldn't teach them, or I have to be silent in church and stuff like that." And so, getting to walk somebody through, hey, why that small thing was wrong, and this person, and it's interesting. We think a deconstructed person is just someone who has completely left the faith, right? Sometimes helping deconstructed people is someone who is even still in the faith, but
Mm,
is dealing with what your book actually lays out, the spirit of religion, which I think that helps, that really aids in people falling into toxic deconstruction who would otherwise not, which is why good teachers are so important and bad teachers are so condemned in the Bible.
yeah.
um,
It's a
it's
big
it's
deal.
so yeah, it's so important because if you have someone that understands the gospel of grace and can show that to people, right? Maybe they don't understand everything, and that's I'm so glad you brought that up because I I don't understand everything about the Bible. I do not understand everything. I don't pretend to understand everything. Like you can't get every nook and cranny,
Yeah.
but I have an understanding of the gospel, so much so that I know that Jesus is Lord, which is why that process is so important, funneling it in. Because when you get down to all of the minutia questions, right? What does, Genesis 1 mean? The two creation accounts, where does stuff like evolution fit in? Women in church, like what are the varying ideas around these certain topics? You already have a foundation of, regardless of my lack of understanding in certain areas right now, I know Jesus is good, right? I know I
Right.
have that relationship with him because I know he loves me. Um, so it really helps being able to just tear apart certain religious ideas and beliefs, like helping
Sure.
them. We should help, and this is a part of, I believe this is a part of discipleship, even to help
Right.
people, to help the young through the deconstruction phase, because they're going to go through it anyway. It's either the world, but the difference is it's either the world is going to take them through it or we take them through it, right? So yeah, it's important.
Yes.
So those are big wins. Just even getting to answer those questions and having people tell me, "Hey, yeah, you've really helped me like answer this question. Like you've really helped me at my understanding. Like biblically, this is something that I was struggling with, or like I stepped away from the faith. I've had this happen like maybe once or twice of someone that said, "Yeah, I completely stepped away from the faith, and I've been watching your videos, and they've been helping." And they'll leave it at
Wow.
that. And maybe I'll never hear from them again, but I just keep
Yeah.
on chugging. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, maybe someone's listening to the podcast right now, and maybe
Mhm.
they're in that mode of deconstructing or maybe questioning, but their intention is not to just walk away from the faith. They want to reconstruct
Right.
their faith. What is a good starting place? I know you laid out that whole funnel thing, but just briefly, just where's the best place to start in your opinion? And I know everybody's in a different place.
Hmm. A best place to start in reconstructing your faith is to, and this is going to sound very simple, but to understand who Jesus is, as in understand the Gospels, right? Understand the character of God, because in the Gospels it lays out the character of God so very well. And
Yeah.
the reason that's important is because when you have the character of God down, like when you have his heart for people down, even if you're not totally convinced about everything else, right? If you are trying to reconstruct back into your faith, it helps in unlinking, as I said earlier, unlinking the people and the bad stuff that's maybe happened to you through religion, through the spirit of religion, from Jesus, into understanding like who that person is. And in the same way, our country had to go through a process of unlinking 9/11 from the rest of the Muslims in the country. If you look at, what was happening during that time, there were Muslims who were attacked just because they were Muslims, right? Which
Yeah.
completely wrong, completely out of pocket. But I always bring up this example because it illustrates what we're kind of under toxic deconstruction doing to Jesus. These bad things have happened, and now instead of saying, okay, these were bad people, flying the banner of this belief system, it's no, the person, this belief system is bad, and anybody under it is also bad. So I would
Mm,
say with Reconstruction, start with finding out who Jesus is for yourself. Read the Gospels,
yeah.
find out who he is, get around some people that you trust. Most important, this is actually very important. Get around people that you trust, if there are any. Maybe find some people online, maybe somebody named the Reconstructionist, maybe the Kill the Dragon podcast, shout out. Um, if you don't have anybody in your personal life that will present the gospel properly. And this is going to be a little bit controversial if you don't already believe. But if you're trying to reconstruct, what do you have to lose? Pray. Pray and ask
Hmm.
God. If say, hey, God, if you're real, I'm knocking on your door. I want to know who you really are. I'm going to read the Gospels. Please reveal yourself. Right? Pray
Yeah.
and ask God. So those are the two
So
starting
good.
points.
Well, man, we are running out of time, and we could talk for hours about this stuff. We're only scratching the surface. I understand, but
Yeah.
man, before we wrap up the podcast today, there's a question I like to ask: is how are you staying encouraged?
Well, by staying close to family. Family is most important when developing a relationship with God because He works through family, He works through relationship. And we
Yeah,
first love each other and then we go out and spread that to the world. Like you have this joy, now go out and spread it to others. And you practice that by loving first your family. So, yeah, that's how I'm saying encourage reading the word, praying, make sure I talk to God the same way He wants to be our parent. So, let's talk to God in that way. So, that really
yeah,
helps. Also, writing down my thoughts. You journal, I write Psalms, like if I'm feeling sad or happy, praise. So, yeah, this is just some ways I'm staying encouraged, and I encourage everyone to do those as well.
that's great, man. Well, tell us one more time how we can find you on TikTok.
Right. On TikTok, The Reconstructionist, Reconstructing the Christian Faith, and also on Discord, Reconstructionist. I'm pretty sure we'll put the links down in the description box below. If you're looking to heal your way back home, go ahead and give me a like and a follow and join me on Discord. We'll have one-on-one conversations. It'll be great.
Jamin, thanks so much for being on the podcast, man. It's been great.
For sure. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks to our listeners for joining us on the podcast today. We hope this has inspired you, encouraged you, helps you move forward in your journey of slaying the dragon in your own life, and maybe even that journey of reconstruction in your life of faith. So, if you enjoyed this, if it's been a help, don't forget to follow the show and leave us a review so more people can find Kill the Dragon. If you're interested in diving deeper into the content, you can find my book, Kill the Dragon, on Amazon, Audible, and wherever books are sold. For more information and other resources, or to contact us with questions directly, you can visit killthedragonbook.com. And again, a very special thanks to our guest today, Jamin Mays, the Reconstructionist. And a big shout out to Joel Auger, who wrote and recorded our totally rad theme song, Slaying Dragons. And you can find all of Joel's music on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your music. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Kill the Dragon.